Today we're focusing on CWLO Communication Level 1, Remember and Understand. This is the level that causes the most confusion because faculty think communication means presentations or public speaking. At this level, it does not. Level 1 is about awareness. Our goal today is to make this practical. What does this look like in your classroom, and more importantly, how do you assess it? At the Remember and Understand level, students can identify individual differences, learning styles, multilingual backgrounds, and how these influence communication. That language comes directly from the communication toolkit. Notice the verb identify. We're not asking students to perform communication yet. We're just asking them to recognize that communication is shaped by who receives it. This level is not giving a speech, writing a polished paper, demonstrating empathy, or delivering a client presentation. Those belong at higher levels. Level 1 is much simpler. Can students explain why the same message might not work for everyone? If they cannot do that, they cannot move up the staircase. The toolkit says students must recognize individual differences, multiple learning styles, multilingual backgrounds. Let's translate that into shop language. Can students explain why instructions might need to change depending on who is listening? That's it. I want to challenge us with a question. Do our assignments assume one type of learner? Let's look at a welding example. Read the welding safety manual and write a 2-page summary. This assumes strong reading fluency, comfort with academic writing, strong English vocabulary, and preference for text-based learning. There's nothing in this assignment that asks students to recognize audience differences. So even though it looks like communication, it's not assessing level 1. Now let's revise that. Review the welding safety process. Identify how these instructions might need to change for a new apprentice, a multilingual worker, or a visual learner. Now we are asking the students to identify differences. They are recognizing audience variables. This is level 1. This is accessible in 5 minutes. Faculty often say, I don't teach ESL. You don't need to. At this level, we're not teaching language. We're asking students to recognize that language affects understanding. Here's an aviation example. Torque the fastener to 25 Newton meters using a calibrated wrench. Ask students, which words might confuse someone new to English? Students identify torque, calibrated, fastener. That is the assessment. Recognition. Imagine you demonstrate a process once verbally. Ask students, who might struggle with this format? Students might say, visual learners, hands-on learners, students unfamiliar with technical vocabulary. That is level 1. They are recognizing differences in how communication is received. I know what many of you are thinking. How do I assess this without creating more grading? You assess identification, not performance. Here's a 5-minute prompt. List 3 individual differences that could influence how welding safety instructions are understood. Meets expectation. Names at least 2 relevant differences. Needs improvement. Cannot name relevant differences. This is binary, quick, observable. Here's another scenario. A student performs poorly after a lecture but succeeds after watching a labeled diagram. You might question, what learning style difference might explain this? If they correctly identify visual versus auditory preference, they meet the expectation. Again, recognition. You do not need a new assignment. Add 1 row to an existing rubric. Communication awareness. Identifies how audience differences influences communication. Meets expectations. Clearly identifies at least 2 relevant differences. Needs improvement. Fails to identify relevant differences. That's it. You're not grading eloquence. You're grading awareness. This is the line that reduces confusion. If the assignment asks, how would this communication need to change for different audience? That's level 1. If the assignment asks, deliver the communication effectively, that is level 2. Recognition versus execution. That distinction solves most misalignment. If students cannot recognize who their audience is, what barriers exist, how learning styles differ, they cannot adapt communication later. Level 1 is foundational. It is step 1 in the staircase. And the good news is, you're probably already doing this. You just need to make the recognition explicit and assess it intentionally. I want to leave you with one more practical move. Before your next assessment, ask, where am I asking students to identify audience differences? If the answer is nowhere, add 1 5-minute identification prompt. That's level 1.